Today is the second video in a series on the 5 elements of an effective math format. I want to talk about the first 2 elements and also show you some clips from previous videos that I posted a few years ago of me doing these routines in action in my classroom. So let's talk about the first one, an invitation for all. We have to keep in mind that our primary goal is to provide equity and access for all learners. So the first effective element is to provide a task or activity that is an invitation to all for the mathematics and the learning. So we want to make sure that we're accessing prior knowledge for students. We want to have that hook and something to build on. We have to activate their schema for everybody. So we want to make sure it's low floor, high ceiling, that everybody has an entry point. From what we know about brain science, we can't build on knowledge, new knowledge, unless we have something to hook it to or secure it to of something we already know. So we want to make sure that students are going to be able to experience productive struggle later in the lesson. We have to get everybody engaged and into the math right away. So what does this look like? What kind of routines is this? I had mentioned in my introduction video, which one doesn't belong, number talks. I can also add to that the true and false routine, as well as number strings and dot talks. Those are all ones that have low floor, high ceiling, and that all students can get involved with. We'll also notice and wonder, of course, that is a routine that is used widely across all content areas. Let's dive a little deeper into the second element, which is a structured but adaptable format. As students get used to these common routines that you're using in the classroom, they're able to think about taking risks. They know what comes next. They know what the process is or the protocol, so they're more apt to join in and not be afraid to do so. There's many different teacher moves that are important when you have this, and you want to build that safety of risk-taking in your classroom, that building belongingness and the feeling of, I am a mathematician and I can do it. So there's a few different teacher moves that you can use to do that. One of them I like to do with number talks and which one does not belong is the fist to chest, where instead of students are raising hands, they're putting their fist to chest, which is a little more private. We don't want to stress out students that have to have a little bit more processing time and really want to think about things. So we want to have that fist to chest and have students put a finger up when they're ready to share a strategy or a thumbs up. They could be thinking of second strategies and putting another finger out. It's a little bit more private and it kind of levels the playing field in the room. Another thing that I do to build belongingness and math identity is to put students' initials next to their strategies as I record and make their thinking public. So recording on the board or wherever you want to do it makes students realize that what I have to say is important and I can contribute to this conversation. Often I put their initials there just to give them that ownership and that value that they need. So you want that structured but adaptable format. You want to do teacher moves that are going to increase that equity and access for all students and use those common routines over time that build safety and trust and risk-taking. Now, we also want to talk about what ways can we adapt these routines, right? The first one that comes to mind is a number talk. So in a number talk or a number string, you're generally revealing one equation or expression or group of numbers at a time, right? And as you go on, usually there's 3 or 4, students are able to apply what they did in the first ones to subsequent expressions or equations. So I think sometimes just the teacher move of changing the location in the room is great. So maybe you usually have students sitting at their table groups while you're doing a number talk on the board. Maybe even just move to a different location in the room and have a piece of chart paper and have students kind of gather around. That would work for both elementary, middle school, and high school. It doesn't matter. Sometimes just moving to another location in the room increases engagement. Another way to adapt a number talk would be to have students maybe think, then write. You could have them use dry erase boards and then show. So sometimes I would display the expression on the board. I'd have them think about it, write it down, hide it, and then show it all at once. That's a great way to kind of do a formative assessment right there in the class as you're looking through the class to see what they wrote. For which one doesn't belong, one way that I love to adapt that routine is to do A, B, C, D cards. So usually there's 4 options in a which one doesn't belong, and students are picking which one they think doesn't belong with the others and why. So if you set up in your room early in the year, cards maybe about this big, laminate them or not, that say A, B, C, and D, that's what I used to do in the 4 corners of the room. So when students, I would display the problem, give them quiet think time, and then say, go stand by the one that doesn't belong and why. What's great about this is you could even spend 1 to 2 minutes of having partners talk. Like let's say there's a group of 10 at A and a group of 7 at B. You could have them talk together about why they think that B didn't belong or A didn't belong before you do your whole group synthesis. Another way to adapt that structure is to have everybody stand up if you thought A didn't belong. I did that recently actually in a lesson demo and it worked really well. And then students were able to stand, and if they wanted to share, they would share. Then I had them sit down. Stand up if you thought B didn't belong. Again, giving that brain break sometimes is all you need to increase the engagement in the classroom. Another one of my favorite routines is the true-false routine, and you can adapt that by having students go to the front of the class for true, the back of the class for false. You can make the true-false routine even more accessible for all learners by teaching your students sign language for T and F for true and false, and having them sign T for true or F for false. Now let's jump into some clips from these warm-up routines in action and look for those effective elements. Is the warm-up an invitation for all students? How is it so? What kind of teacher moves give students that time to think about it and for the stress to be lowered and increase engagement in the room? How am I making public student thinking and strategies? And how am I helping them to build on their knowledge so that they can jump into the more productive struggle parts of the lesson? As you watch, think about how you might adapt these routines in your own classroom. Take a minute of quiet time and think about what you notice and what you might wonder. You could jot down your notice and wonder, and then we're going to share in just a moment. I'm just going to put your initials there. Let's do a 1, 2, 3 clap for him. 1, 2, 3. Good job. 12 paper towels. 12 paper towels for each case. Let's do a 1, 2, 3 clap for that notice. 1, 2, 3. Excellent. 1, 2, 3. Good. We're celebrating everybody's contribution. Yes. Okay. So we are in lesson 6 of unit 6, and today we're going to be exploring a which one does not belong for your invitation to the math. So I want you to see here on the board I wrote 4 equations. And you are going to choose which one you think does not belong, and you have to be able to justify your reasoning. So I'm going to give you about 30 to 45 seconds of think time.
Change the final answer?
Well, do we know this yet?
No.
So that's why we can't do that first. That's why it forces us to do a property that we're going to be learning about soon called the distributive property. So you focused on these two and you did 15 divided by 3. You did 5 plus 1. You had to do the opposite. I think that's where your thinking was. You had to do 5 plus 1 equals 6. Good job. 1, 2, 3. Did you have something else to add?
So I actually drew a tape diagram.
You drew a tape diagram. Oh my gosh, I'd love to see this.
Actually, I did x minus 1 3 times.
X minus 1 3 times. Is that like this?
Yeah.
Awesome!
And then the total is 15.
The total is 15 because that's the right side of our equation.
-1 for all of them.
You changed it to plus -1. All right, awesome job, class. Now we're going to dive into some more situations in tape diagrams. So after we did the first statement successfully, we said the second statement. And students went either to the front of the room if they thought it was true or to the back of the room if they thought it was false. But there were 3 students that were still standing at their desks. And I said, well, what did you guys pick? And they all kind of looked at each other a little bit awkwardly and they said, well, we're not sure yet. Our students had created a third option. I don't know, and I'm uncertain right now. One of the things that was so cool about that is those students were okay not knowing the answer and not being sure yet. It said a lot about our classroom culture. It said a lot about the way that we're doing math this year, that mistakes are welcome, that it's okay to be in the learning pit, that it's okay that we're productively struggling or we're just not sure at all what to do yet. What was also neat about that is those students weren't giving up. They weren't unwilling to try. They were trying, they just weren't sure. So it made me think a lot about, well, how do I model that as a teacher in the classroom? Stay tuned for my next video as I go into another effective element of a math warm-up. Are you ready for more?